The bond between a mother and child she births in this world fractured by a society that tells that mother that she has to be selfish and self-serving above the needs and care of her children. This is what happens when people stop going to church. This is what happens when people turn away from God. Until people hit rock bottom in their carefree lives, until the earth is shaken to such a degree that humanity can't stand it, then and only then will they once again understand they have a responsibility to God. God has been challenged to prove himself once again. And you ought to be afraid when God has to prove once again that he is still God and there are no other gods before him. This is what happens in this time. Noah, in his time, people challenged God to prove himself. And God brought the rain 40 days and 40 nights and spared only Noah and his family. When the people of Sodom and Gomorrah turned their back on God's laws and coveted lust and unnatural affections, God rained down fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah, and they don't exist any longer. In world history, for those of you who ever studied Edward Gibbon's book, The Fall of the Roman Empire, you will remember that the book points out that there is a pattern in which society loses its moral compass. Gibbon points out how the divorce rate in ancient Rome grew to such abnormal numbers that it weakened the dignity and sanctity of the home, which led to demoralizing and even destroying the nation itself. According to Gibbons, the fall of society precedes the fall of a nation. Gibbon said, great nations rise and fall. The people go from bondage to spiritual truth, to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to selfishness, from selfishness to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, from dependence back into bondage again. This is where we are today in America. A few years ago, my friend, Dr. Jeremiah Wright, pastor of the Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, Illinois, was scrutinized, criticized, highly maligned, character assassinated, because the news media picked up a little tweak out of a sermon that he preached, where in that sermon he said, God damn America. And they played that on every major broadcast, all in an effort to attack the young junior senator from the state of Illinois, Barack Obama, who was running for the presidency of the United States. They didn't listen to the whole sermon. All they heard was Jeremiah Wright say, God damn America. What he was saying is God is damning America. God is judging America. We are a nation that incarcerates more people than any communist government on the face of this earth. We're a country that executes more people than any nation on the face of this earth. We are a nation who held the greatest and the most massive form of slavery that the world has ever known. We pose ourselves to be the moral compass of the world, but yet we become so hypocritical in what we do and what we say. That's what Pastor Wright was preaching about then. Historically, civilizations fall because of slow degeneration of moral values. History has taught us that a civilization must have a religious or moral framework that promotes unity and provides a model of cooperation and social cohesion. Now, Bishop told you that I taught him some years ago, and most of you some years ago, that women are the builders of society. Men can build buildings, and men can build governments, and men can build politics, but women build families. Women shape and build the society. Now, what happens when our women forfeit or renege on their responsibility to be women and mothers? What happens when women decide that they want to play around like men? What happens when women decide that they don't want to be mothers to their children, but they want to be independent and free and let somebody else mother their children? What happens when a wife does not want to really be a wife any longer? What happens to a society When a woman says she doesn't want to be a mother and a wife, society declines and falls because it is the woman who puts the family together. It's the woman who holds the family together. It's the woman who not only births the children, but she also raises the children. And sometimes she raises her husband. In most instances, religion such as Christianity emerges in such a way that it attracts a majority of citizens and serves as the anchor for a society's moral guidelines. This is how this country was founded, based on Judeo-Christian ethic, based on a concept of God, based on a concept of freedom. Those so-called forefathers of America, those men, when they decided to write those instruments in ink, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, had this undergirding of faith from the Word of God, from the Bible. And this country was founded and predicated upon what they actually learned and believed from God's holy word. In many instances, religion is that very fabric that attracts and holds together all of what we know. As historian Will Durant pointed out, there's no significant example in history before our time of a society successfully maintaining moral life without the aid of religion. The importance of religion to a civilization's continued existence can never be underestimated. You take religion out of America and America will stop to exist. You take Christ out of America and America will stop existing. You keep taking God out of America and America will stop existing. History has shown that when a society becomes morally corrupt, civility is destroyed, the society becomes unstable, and inevitably the nation slides towards collapse. Religion delineates the line between right and wrong, drawing the line in an indelible ink that cannot be altered as the society matures and grows. Now, what that simply means is this. We have to have rules. We have to have morals. We have to have values. Religion gives us those morals and those values. What's happening now are those values and those morals are being eradicated, are being taken away. They're being taken away from us. And how can America stand without these values? I'm not going to apologize to anyone for what I know to be true, what I know to be right in the Bible. Marriage is an institution between a man and a woman. And I don't have to hate anybody. I don't have to dislike anyone. I don't have to hate anyone to say what I believe. I don't have to be homophobic. I don't have to have anything against you. I say what I believe based on the word of God that I read and understand to be true. God made man for woman and God made woman for man, and God never intended for a man to be with a man or a woman to be with a woman. And once this nation declared through its Supreme Court that that is a lie, I ask you the question as Paul asked, who changed the truth of God into a lie? It was the creature. Not the creator. It was the creature, the great deceiver, the great liar, who are getting in the heads of people with what they believe rational thought processes, telling them, well, it doesn't seem right that we should feel this way about people. Let's have tolerance, let's have acceptance. Well, I'd love to rob a bank. I'd love to walk in a bank and just walk out with all the money that I need, interest-free. But I can't do it because there's a law and there's a moral ground that I stand on. Thou shalt not steal. So while my mind and my body may be inclined to want to commit that crime, that sense of essence in me that says there's a law, there's a moral ground, there's a line that I can't cross. That line keeps me from doing such a horrible thing. When that line is blurred, by the mores of a society that willfully desires the absence of God, the absence of moral values, the absence of religion, the absence of religious principles, then that society will fall. And if that society falls, that nation will fall as well. America is teetering on the brink of a fall. Speaking to the Salvation Army in 1951, General Douglas MacArthur said, "History fails to record a single precedent in which nations subject to moral decay have not passed into political and economic decline. There has been either a spiritual awakening to overcome the moral lapse or a progressive deterioration leading to the ultimate national disaster." He said that in 1951. Thousands of years ago, the Hebrew prophet Haggai told us what he was seeing. He wrote, "For thus says the Lord of hosts, once more in a little while, I am going to shake the heavens and the earth, the sea also and the dry land. I will shake all the nations. I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth. I will overthrow the thrones of kingdoms and destroy the power of kingdoms of the nations." That's what Bible prophecy is. An intercept from the mind of the all-knowing, all-seeing God of the universe, a weather report, if you may, from the future, a storm warning from the future. Not so that we will be afraid, but so that we will be awake and ready and faithful and walking close to the Lord when the storms do come. Now is an appropriate time for America to take a spiritual audit of itself, to assess how we're doing morally, spiritually, how families are doing, how our congregations are doing. In the book of Hebrews, the writer writes, "See to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking. For if those did not escape when they refused him who warned him on earth, much less will we escape or turn away from him who warns from heaven. And his voice shook the earth then. But now he has promised, saying, Yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens." Jesus, sitting with his disciples on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, warned us in Matthew 24 what would be shaken in the last days. He said, "The sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the power of heavens will be shaken. And then when men least expected," Jesus said, "the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory." Beloved, I come to you this morning to tell you God is getting ready to deal with us. Nine of the 10 costliest, most expensive hurricanes in American history have happened in the last 10 years. The worst was Hurricane Katrina, which nearly wiped out New Orleans and ended up costing $108 billion. Hurricane Irene will likely rank in the top 5 and has made 2011 the worst year in the history of America for natural disasters. Last year, we've seen the worst outbreak of tornadoes in nearly a half century. The worst fires in the history of Texas are going on right now amidst the worst drought in the history of that state. Right now, while we sit here, California is in the midst of the greatest drought in that state's history, with water shortages threatening the nation's greatest farmlands with devastation. We've seen the biggest earthquake on the East Coast since 1875. We've seen the biggest earthquake in Colorado since 1882. At the same time, our economy is being shaken to the core. 42,000 American factories have been shut down in the last 10 years. 14 million Americans have lost their jobs in the past few years. Millions of families have lost their homes to bankruptcy and foreclosure. Our federal debt now is more than $14 trillion. That's trillion with a T. It's hard to imagine how much money that is. Well, let me put it this way to you. If we were to pay $1 per every second, per every hour of every day, for every month to pay down our national debt, it would take us 32,000 years to pay down just $1 trillion. 32,000 years. But yet our debt is not 1 trillion, it's 14 trillion. So there would be 32,000 years times 14. People are beginning to wonder if we can turn this thing around, or whether we're headed down toward economic collapse, economic implosion. Sometimes it feels like we're out of the middle of a frozen lake. Suddenly we begin to hear the ice start cracking all around us. That's what I feel right now in America. I feel like I'm standing on a frozen lake and I can hear the ice cracking, and we're going to fall through at any moment and any time. That's the state of the economy. But what about the state of our culture? Since 1973, we've seen more than 53 million abortions in America. Pornography revenues today exceed the revenues of ABC, CBS, and NBC combined. Listen to this. Today, the pornography industry is larger than the revenues of Microsoft, Google, Amazon, eBay, Yahoo, Apple, Netflix, and Earthlink combined. Where are the Christians? What difference are we making? That answer is painful. It's painful to hear. Too many people who say they're Christians are asleep or distracted or intoxicated by this world. Like the old country and western song, looking for love in all the wrong places. Too many people who say they are Christians have been looking for love and meaning, not the love of Christ, but the love of the world.